Shalom Aleichem. My name is Tony Pino, and today we're continuing in our series concerning the book of Acts. Today we're looking at chapter 23, and we have Shaul, Paul, under Roman custody right now. The Jews want to have him put on trial and put to death for preaching the gospel. Shaul lets them know he is a Roman citizen, so he deserves their protection from what is going on. They understand that. They are protecting him, but Shaul wants to address the Sanhedrin. So they are giving him permission to go ahead and address the Sanhedrin here in Acts 23. And that's what we're going to get to see. What does Paul have to say to them? Amen. So again, we are trying to do our best to keep everything in its historical context, setting, language. Amen. So that when we find these biblical truths, they can transcend into any generation, even in our lives today. Amen. So come with me as we go and check out what does Paul have to say to the Sanhedrin today. Amen. So here we are in Acts 23, starting with verse 1. Paul, looking intently at the Sanhedrin, said, "Brothers, I have lived my life in all good conscience for God up to this day." But the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, Ananias, ordered those standing by him to strike him on the mouth. Then Paul said to him, "God is going to strike you on the mouth, you whitewashed wall. Do you sit judging me according to the Torah, and yet in violation of the Torah you order me to be struck?" Those standing nearby said, "Do you insult God's Kohen Gadol?" Paul said, "I didn't know, brothers, he is the Kohen Gadol. For it has been written, you shall not speak evil of a ruler of your people." Amen. So Paul is quoting Exodus 22, verse 27 here, but I do believe he's kind of doing it in tongue in cheek here. He's kind of trying to be sarcastic because, of course, Ananias is one of two high priests at this time. All right. They're already in violation of the Torah. The Romans are the ones in charge of the high priest position. Ananias is not from the priestly line of Aaron. All right. He actually got his position by favoritism or by paying for it. And of course, somewhere around 15 CE, they put him out of high priest position. We don't know exactly what he did, but they put his son-in-law in the position, Caiaphas, there. So in a sense, you have two acting Kohen Gadols, two high priests, which is not in accordance with the Torah. All right. And so Paul knows this, right? He was very close with the Sanhedrin. He received the papers to go and get believers and have them arrested and brought back to Jerusalem. So Paul knows very well the people of the Sanhedrin. He knows the high priest. He knows the situation. Okay. He knows the difference between Ananias and Caiaphas. So I believe he's talking tongue in cheek here. And so, yes, Ananias is in violation of the Torah by having him struck. All right. There was no trial yet. There were no witnesses that could disprove what Shaul was preaching on the resurrection, on the gospel of Yeshua. And so, yes, he was hit. And by hitting him, that was a violation of the Torah, punishing him without cause. All right. We also see that in Yochanan, John chapter 18 with Yeshua. Let's go ahead and quickly go there. All right. So in Yochanan, in John chapter 18, verse 19, we have the Kohen Gadol then questioned Yeshua about his disciples and his teaching. "I have spoken openly to the world." Yeshua answered him, "I always taught in the synagogues and the temple where all the Jewish people come together. I spoke nothing in secret. Why question me? Ask those who have heard what I spoke to them. Look, they know what I said." When he had said this, one of the officers standing nearby Yeshua gave him a slap, saying, "Is that the way you answer the Kohen Gadol?" Yeshua answered him, "If I have spoken wrongly, give evidence of the wrong. But if rightly, why hit me?" Then Ananias sent him, still tied up, to Caiaphas, the Kohen Gadol. So as you can see, there are two high priests here. All right. And the officer strikes Yeshua unjustly. Okay. He was not in violation of the Torah, but Yeshua has a lot more restraint in how he speaks and how he talks than Paul. Again, I think Paul is kind of doing it tongue in cheek there. He's trying to be sarcastic, but that again is just my opinion according to the context there. Amen. So let's go ahead and, well, first of all, let's understand that this slapping in both cases is trying to shame the person who's being arrested in front of everybody. Okay. And so they are doing that unjustly. It just was a custom in that day. Amen. All right, let's go ahead and get back to Acts chapter 23. Amen. So here we are back in Acts 23. And of course, again, Paul has just been slapped unjustly. And of course, look at the term here that he uses, you whitewashed walls. All right, this must have been a term in the first century used, to disgrace someone or talk down upon someone, obviously to show that they have some type of righteousness that they think they have, but in actuality, amen, they are wicked and, disgraceful. They're not following the line of the Torah, because Yeshua says the very same thing in Matthew 23 about the Parashim, calling them whitewashed tombs. Amen. So it must have been a phrase used back there in the first century. All right. So now Paul, of course, the lawyer in him being so witty and smart, all right, he goes on to know exactly what to do. So in verse 6, he says, but recognizing that one group was Sadducees and the other Pharisees, Paul began crying out in the Sanhedrin, brothers, I am a Pharisee, son of a Pharisee. I am on trial because of the hope of the resurrection of the dead. And this causes a huge uproar, because we know that the Sadducees don't believe in angels. They don't believe in a resurrection. And the Parashim, the Pharisees, do. So it causes a huge interruption in what is going on. Paul knows exactly what he's doing here. Okay. And so they become so argumentative that the commander is afraid that they're going to tear Paul to pieces over this situation. And so he grabs him and takes him out. Of course, he's protecting Paul. Paul is a Roman citizen. He does not want to be the commander that allowed a Roman citizen right in front of him to be torn to pieces. That would not look so good back in Rome for him. And so he gets Paul under his protection, takes him back to the headquarters there. And of course, the Judean leaders are not done with Paul. They want to, further examine him, but they have a conspiracy to kill him. So if the Romans start bringing him back over to where the Sanhedrin is, they have a plot to kill Paul on their way there. And so what is interesting is, of course, there is a young man who catches wind of this, and it's actually Paul's sister's son. And so he runs to tell Paul that the Judean leaders have agreed to kill him. All right. When they are supposed to bring him to the Sanhedrin, they have a plot to kill Paul. So Paul, of course, he's going to send the young man to the commander, and the young man's going to expose this plot to the commander. So the commander is going to, of course, not send Paul there. He is going to then begin, starting in verse 23, he's going to call two of the centurions, and he's going to say, at the third hour of the night, prepare 200 soldiers along with 70 horsemen and 200 spearmen to proceed as far as Caesarea. Also provide mounts for Paul to ride so that he might be brought safely to Felix, the governor. All right, they want him to be brought safely to Caesarea, because from there he can be shipped to Rome. Remember, it's been prophesied by Yahweh that Paul would go through what he's going through here in Jerusalem, and that he would also be sent to Rome, okay, to be put on trial. So there's nothing new, Paul knows exactly the prophecy that has been spoken to him by the Lord at this time. So there's no problem here. Okay. And so as of course, the plot was unraveled, and they get him, of course, safely to Caesarea. It says in verse 31, so the soldiers, keeping with their orders, took Paul and brought him by night to Antipatris. On the next day, they returned to headquarters, leaving the horsemen to go on with him. When they came to Caesarea and delivered the letter to the governor, they also presented Paul before him. Upon reading the letter, the governor asked what province he was from. When he learned that Paul was from Cilicia, he said, I will give you a hearing when your accusers have arrived also. Then he gave orders for Paul to be guarded in Herod's Proctorium. Amen. So that's where we end here in chapter 23. And of course, Yahweh is keeping Paul protected. Paul is, he's just very smart, very witty. He knows exactly what to say at the right moment. And again, looking back at what happened to Paul, I do believe, in my opinion, he knew exactly what was going on. He was kind of being smart aleck, like a smart aleck there, when he was, talking about the high priest. Amen. And so you can see that the corruption that is within Jerusalem is so steep. This is the reason why the temple is going to be destroyed. It's not going to be destroyed because of the work of Yeshua on the cross, his resurrection. No, it's going to be destroyed just like it was the first time. The first time, the corruption of the leadership is why the first temple was destroyed. And this is why the second temple is going to be destroyed. And this is what Yeshua prophesied. Amen. It is because of their corruption, their evilness. So we do know that when Yeshua returns, there are animal offerings, there is a temple. All right, the Levitical priesthood is up and running. Just go ahead and read Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 14 through 26, and you will see that clearly. And so, but no, Paul is continuing his mission to preach the gospel of truth about Yeshua, even willing to risk his life. Amen. So, next time together, we will be doing chapter 24 of the book of Acts. So, until we meet again, everyone, shalom.